Hello everybody and welcome to this edition of Berkeley Sports Talk. And right now, let's get to the NL East preview. So I'm going to do this in order of teams I think where they're going to finish in the division. So I picked the Nationals to win the division. So let's get to the Nationals. Okay, so the Nationals. Last year, obviously they won the World Series. And they did so after getting off to a 19-31 start, which in normal years, 50 games. That is about a third of the season, maybe a little bit less than a third of the season. But this year, it's a 60-game season, so the Nationals, whatever kind of slow start they get off to, even if it's not quite 19-31, but if they're 25-25 after 50 games, then the chance of them making the playoffs would be very slim at that margin. So this Nationals team this year, they basically need to play great baseball for 3 months if they want to win the World Series. Since again, you have to play very well at the back end of July, all of August. You got to play well through all of September, and then you got to play well, as you all know, through all of October. I mean, to win the World Series, you have to win 11, and in some cases, what the Nationals did, and what the 2014 Giants did, is win 12 games. So this year, it's a different team. Same and different. So let's talk about the rotation. Obviously, you have Max Scherzer. And now, one thing with Max Scherzer is, can he stay healthy this year? Are the injuries that he got last year, but about this time a year ago, he was battling back injuries and barely pitched from about right around the All-Star break all the way until late August, battled a lot of back issues. Question is, can Scherzer have a full healthy season? Steven Strasburg was healthy last year for the first time and probably since 2014, completely healthy. Does he go on the DL any at all? And then you have Patrick Corbin, Anibal Sanchez, and then Austin both are Eric Fede, each battling for that fifth spot. Joe Ross opted out, so now you have 4 reliable starters, which I think is what you need really in the playoffs. And then 2 others, and then you have both in Fede, who if one of them outpitches Anibal Sanchez, could be in the playoff rotation if they make it that far. So again, if you talk about last year, what happened with Scherzer, what happened with Strasburg, that happens again this year. I think their chances of winning the division go down dramatically, especially if Strasburg even misses 2 starts for a period of time in the middle of August, or maybe Scherzer does. The rotation needs to stay healthy. And again, if everybody's healthy, Scherzer is going to be a Cy Young candidate, so is Strasburg. And Corbin, in a short sprint like that, Patrick Corbin could win the Cy Young this year. What if Corbin has a sub-2 ERA? What if they all do? What if this is a dominant starting rotation this year? And that's what it can be. So in other news right now, Howie Kendrick and Juan Soto both just arrived at Nationals camp. So again, and I was reading some storylines, and I just want to get to this right now, and this could be a whole separate video. The Nationals, to lead into this, the Nationals apparently may not be able to play at Nationals Park, at least for the start of the year, and maybe even all season. And the reason why is, number one, apparently Washington, D.C. Since again, it's basically its own district. It's separate, has its own rules, just like a lot of states do. Apparently has a 14-day quarantine period. We have to self-quarantine for 14 days, so that is equivalent to 2 weeks. So if the Yankees came in at Nationals Park, that would have been on July 23rd, they would have to quarantine for 2 weeks. I mean, the Yankees would have had to be in Washington, D.C. a week ago in order for them to play, so they can't do that now. So now, it looks like they could play. It looks like they'll play in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where the single A team, once the Potomac Nationals, will be moving to Fredericksburg. They played all those years in Woodbridge, so now so that's where they may be playing this year in that new stadium in Fredericksburg, which granted, when there's no crowd, what difference does it make whether you're playing in Nationals Park or whether you're playing out there? So again, for many of the players who live very close to Washington, D.C., it's going to be quite a commute, many nights to the ballpark, but that's just the way it's going to be this year. So it looks like, and another alternative option you could do is you could think about Harrisburg, being in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's another alternative. But I don't think they will go to Harrisburg. What I've heard is most likely Fredericksburg. So what this means for the Nationals is they might play their games in Fredericksburg this year, which that will be a big adjustment. Okay, so now you have Howie Kendrick and Juan Soto. They both arrived at summer camp. Since again they were under 2-week quarantine, so they I guess they got to Washington D.C. later, and they haven't practiced yet. So again, the team has been playing inter squad scrimmages. They've been practicing. They've been doing drills. So what this all means right now for Kendrick and Soto is they have not gotten their workouts in. They're 2 weeks behind. So the question is, they have just 6 days to get ready for the start of the season. So will they be ready to play? And if so, and if they are ready to play, do they get off to a slow start? Maybe due to rustiness. Now again, maybe they need to get in a week's worth of at-bats. And again, they can play in the exhibition games. That's how they can get... That's how they can... I think they can catch up pretty quickly. I've also heard talks of Victor Robles not quite being ready. So again, if you don't have Victor Robles or Soto or Kendrick quite in your opening day lineup, you're going to be shorthanded right now already. And again, Kendrick, Soto, probably maybe your two best hitters right now. They probably are your two best hitters right now. Not to mention Robles. Robles could make the debate for number 3. And then you have Anthony Rendon. Yes, Anthony Rendon has left for the Angels. So with Rendon, Anthony Rendon is irreplaceable at third base. Since almost nobody, and I've said this so many times over the years, Anthony Rendon is about a notch below Nolan Arenado, just slightly below Arenado. Doesn't quite hit as many home runs. Maybe not, not quite as good of a hitter. Maybe not quite. Is very good at defense, but maybe not quite win the Gold Glove. That's why he's probably the second best third baseman in all of baseball. It's just right there. But gone is Rendon. You lose both the defense and of course his hitting ability. I mean, Rendon the last 3 years, and really last year took off where he hit over 30 home runs, drove 100 RBIs. Where Rendon was the leader of the offense. Gone is Rendon, who is now with the Angels. So you've lost that third baseman spot, and I think third base will either come down to Asdrubal Cabrera, who drove in 91 runs last year, really helped the Nationals down the stretch last year, or Carter Kieboom, who played briefly. I think only played about a week with 10 days, maybe 2 weeks with the Nationals last year. Will now get another opportunity to play. I think he'll play third base. And by the way, there is the DH this year, so if you want to look at their lineup this year, catching will be split between Gomes and Suzuki. I think Suzuki is better at offense, has more power, will be more likely to home run. Gomes, I think, is more of a pure catcher, will play on defense. First base may be Eric Thames, who initially I thought would be kind of a platoon against righties this year. And again, knowing Thames and his power ability, could go on a sprint and hit a lot of home runs for them. And that span then at second base, you have Starlin Castro is brought in, veteran hitter. I guess you could see good power, good average. I think Anthony Rendon is irreplaceable. No one will be able to hit 300. Will be able to hit over 300, hit 30 plus home runs, drive in 100 RBIs. Anthony Rendon is irreplaceable, so they need to find a way to navigate around this. Since you think about Nationals lineups, I mean, just 2 years ago they had Bryce Harper and Daniel Murphy. In 2017 they had a really good lineup when you had Harper, Daniel Murphy, Anthony Rendon, and Ryan Zimmerman all in the same lineup, all having really good years, and not to mention support around them. The lineup was quite good in 2016. I mean, this team has had some really good lineups in years past, and this year, I think the offense might be some of the worst that it's been potentially in years right now. And with their lineup, this year it's going to look different. So then again, you do have Trey Turner, full season. What can you get out of Trey Turner in a short sprint? Obviously, as I just mentioned, still Cabrera and then Soto. Again, will he be in good playing shape? Again, I think we'll get a few at bats in the exhibition game, so I think we'll be fine. But again, that's somewhat of concern, not being with the team the last few weeks. And obviously Robles, can he take a step forward? And then you have Adam Eaton, who I think is a good hitter. Can get on base type guy. So again, the lineup could be pretty good, but not great. I think Rendon's a glaring hole to this lineup. The bullpen I don't think will be as bad as it was last year. I think it could be good this year, not great. I think it'll be about average. I don't think it'll be. I don't think they'll be. I don't think they'll have the worst bullpen ever of any playoff team ever. And again, if these same problems happen, the bullpen gets bad this year and takes them out of games and costs them a lot of games like it did early last year, that could be the difference between playoffs and not. So again, this team won the World Series last year. Yes, they are different. I think the biggest difference is not having Anthony Rendon. Other than that, they're fairly similar. Back is Daniel Hudson. Back is Sean Doolittle. And then you've added Will Harris from the Astros, who's on the wrong end of things towards the end of the playoffs. So that's why I think the Nationals will win the NL East. But again, with this team, they have to play well. They have to play good baseball all year long. Basically, they can't take any months off. Like last year, they didn't play very good baseball for most of April, all of May, and then parts of September. They kind of stumbled last year. This year, good baseball for 3 straight months if they want to be world champions. Okay, so the Braves. This is kind of interesting storyline. So the Braves won 97 games last year, won the NL East. They won the last 2 NL Eastern titles. You know, the 2018 team was kind of a nice story. People were so happy to see them in the playoffs again. They're kind of a nice surprise team in the division. And it looked like a team that was just happy to be in the playoffs. Last year they won 97 and took a big step forward. You could make an argument that they were a potential World Series contending team. They couldn't quite win 100 games last year. Blew a 2-1 lead to the Cardinals. Now I think there's more pressure this year for the Braves. Again, it's between the Braves and the Nationals for the division. I think those are the 2 favorites. And on opening day, good news for him, Mike Soroka will be starting on opening day, 22 years old, all-star caliber pitcher already. I think this is probably the first of many opening days for him. And then after that, here's an interesting thing about the rotation. So you have Mike Fulton-Awich, who again, Fulton-Awich in 2018 was an all-star. Last year took a big step backwards. I think he was battling injuries, appears to be healthy right now. And at about a third of a season, how well can Mike Fulton-Awich pitch? I think they need a bounce back year from him. Max Fried had a good year last year. I think really took a big step forward in his first full year as a starter. How does Fried build on that? And then Cole Hamels will start the season on the IL. So again, Hamels has been battling injuries for a long time. I mean, we knew all the way back 4 months ago, if everything was normal, Hamels would have started the season on the IL. We don't know when he'll get healthy. He's on a 1-year deal, kind of brought in. I really think if he can get healthy and be strong, say, come October, come the playoffs, I think what Cole Hamels is, I like that addition since brings playoff experience. I mean, all those years in Philadelphia being a World Series MVP, those years in Philadelphia, some of those years in Texas, and even recent years in Chicago, knows what it's like to win. Is kind of here, I think, to kind of work with the pitching staff. You know, I think will be a good influence on the other pitchers, and then other starting pitchers, and then it could be interesting. Kyle Wright could start, could be in the rotation, especially if Cole Hamels potentially out. And then Sean Newcomb had a good bullpen year last year. Was really good in the bullpen. Is getting another opportunity to start. So again, we talk about this as a trend around the league. If let's say Fried and Fulte, or Soroka, Fulte and Fried get full, they start, maybe you potentially have Kyle Wright and Sean Newcomb piggybacking. Potentially, maybe that's when you use the bullpen. Potentially, so starting rotation, I think Soroka's a good option for sure. Fulte, I think he could be good. I don't know. We've seen 5 years worth of pitching from Fulton-Awich. I don't quite know what he is yet. At times, it looked like an all-star. Fried, I think Fried really could bounce, really does have confidence built into this year. I think Fried really could have a good year. And then Wright, we don't know. He's had very limited major league experience. And then we'll see with Sean Newcomb coming back into the rotation. Bad news for this team is Will Smith, who potentially could have been a closer, certainly a setup man, will miss the start of the season with COVID-19. So again, as we talked about the role of Chapman, will he ever really have, how well will Will Smith be able to be this year? Missing the start of the season with COVID-19, I think it may take a while to really get his feet going. And with a lot of these players with COVID-19, I think it takes a while to adjust in this short season. There's a lot less time to do that. Then you have Mark Melanson, who was acquired last year from the Giants, both him and Smith, well, and Shane Green, who came in from the Tigers. So that could be a good 7, 8, 9 combination. Like I said, bullpens at times were a weakness for the Braves this year, and they're trying to make that a strength. So again, the outfield, they signed Yasiel Puig. I went at length to that yesterday. You can go to my YouTube channel, Brooklyn Sports Talk 13, and you can find Yasiel Puig to the Braves. A very recent video, made it 2 days ago. Talked at length about that. So this could be your outfield: Ronald Acuna, Marcell Ozuna, and Yasiel Puig. That could be your outfield most days. And keep in mind, Puig could DH with the DH. Keep that in mind, so maybe see some at bats from Ender and Ciarte. But again, with Ozuna in a short sprint, has played an all-star caliber. They need Ozuna to get off to a fast start, really. And Ronald Acuna, Ronald Acuna could have a bad year this year. Keep in mind, maybe there's times where a star struggles for a period of 2 months. Well, you can't afford to get that out of Acuna. And by the way, Freddie Freeman was starting to feel better. May miss the start of the season. He did test positive for COVID-19. And again, getting Freeman back, how does he feel at the plate? How comfortable does he feel? Does he have as much energy? If Freeman's not himself and doesn't have the full energy to be the best player he can be, then the Braves will significantly be affected this year. And that is definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. And I feel like Freddie Freeman will miss the start of the season. I feel like it might take him a while. Maybe it takes him a month to get going, and maybe he doesn't feel right for the first month. And granted, only has 1 good month this year of baseball. So again, I think the lineup could very well suffer this year with not being able to get the full ability of Freddie Freeman that we have seen over really the past decade. Ozzie Albies, this is his 3rd full year for Ozzie Albies. Again, Acuna and Albies, I mean, they were 20 and 21 and then 21 and 22. They're all, Acuna's 22, Albies is 23. I mean, this is their 3rd full season together. Albies came up as a 20-year-old back in 2017. So again, this is still, you could still say this is kind of a young group, not as young as what they were. And this is a team that had 2 years of experience. I mean, first of all, they're in the playoffs. They were able to win a playoff game the first year. They got experience. Last year, they should have beaten the Cardinals. They really should have won that game 4. But they didn't. They couldn't advance to the NLCS like they should have last year. This year is kind of a big year for them. Another interesting storyline, I want to see Austin Riley again, who got off to such a great start last year, but then down the stretch really wasn't playing as much. Austin Riley could DH right now, could play 3rd. That is open with Josh Donaldson gone. Maybe there's a day where Marcell Ozuna is DHing, and maybe Riley plays left, so I think we'll play left, 3rd, and we'll DH. And with Freddie Freeman out, could he potentially play 1st? I don't know. I think that takes some learning to do, but I couldn't rule him out. I guess I could see him playing 1st to maybe start the year. I don't know, and I haven't really heard this or anything. That's just a speculation I'm making. Maybe something that I would think about doing. And then finally go down, Dansby Swanson in a short season. We've seen a few flashes of his hitting ability. We don't know yet this is the 4th full year for Dansby Swanson. So again, the Braves team is fairly similar to what they were last year. Obviously, Josh Donaldson is not there anymore. Sure, in comes Cole Hamels. Gone is Brian McCann, who's a good veteran leader last year, who has retired. So again, a fairly similar Braves team. How good is the bullpen? I think at times last year was bad, at times it was good. I think it was an up and down bullpen. And sure, they have a full season of Will Smith and Shane Green and Mark Melanson, who were all not there until really July or August, really down the stretch last year. The Braves, I think, will finish in 2nd. I think we'll likely make it to the playoffs. Okay, so now I want to talk about the Phillies. They are an interesting team. And again, this is a division last year where I thought Nationals, Braves, Mets, and Phillies were 4 out of the 5 teams have a shot to make it to the playoffs this year. And if you had expanded playoffs this year, which that's a big thing, I'm looking forward to the future. And I really think it's going to happen in 2022. With expanded playoffs, I think all 4 of these teams could potentially make it. Certainly 3 out of 4. So for the Phillies this year, this is an interesting team. You know, there's a lot of new faces in Philadelphia. So this is year 2 out of 13 for Bryce Harper. And year 1 was fairly similar to what 2018 was. They got off to a good start. At times they even led the division. But then they fell down the stretch. And then they just couldn't. And then they ended up missing the playoffs. Okay. So coming back for them is Jake Arrieta, who's been there for 2 years now. 4.64 ERA in 24 starts. Okay, so they need a bounce back year from Jake Arrieta. Since again, 2015, Cy Young won 22 games, and not that wins really matter, but had one of the most dominant second halves ever. Was the best pitcher in baseball. You could make an argument in 2015. Has regressed pretty much every year since then, and now needs to stay healthy this year. Really needs to improve. Needs to have a better year for sure. And then Aaron Nola went from a 2.37 ERA to a 3.87. 3.8 is not bad by any means. But again, you talk about Cy Young level ERA, kind of league leader, to then much higher. I mean, if your ERA improves by a run and a half, I think that's a problem. I think his ERA needs to be somewhere in the middle. I think it probably will be somewhere in the middle, kind of in the low 3s. But Noel needs to go back to kind of that Cy Young caliber pitcher. And then you have Zach Wheeler, I think is overpaid. I mean, I talked about this. I made a video about this in early December about Zach Wheeler and how I thought he was overpaid. Was going to get overpaid $100 million. I thought that was way too much. So Zach Wheeler, this is an interesting factor to think about. And who knows where the Phillies, I mean, I'm going to have to look at their schedule, but whether the Phillies are at home or the road, I heard Wheeler could be attending the birth of one of his children. So what that means is he could miss a few starts. Once again, if he goes, let's say he's gone for a start, comes back, has to quarantine, can miss another start, that's 10 days worth of baseball right there. So if Wheeler misses a few starts, that could be a big factor. So again, if you have Arrieta, Nolan, Wheeler at their very best level, so Arrieta, it's unrealistic that'll be 2015. But if Arrieta can put together a really nice stretch and be a good, solid starter this year, that's a bonus. Aaron Nola, Cy Young caliber pitcher, maybe he does win the Cy Young, maybe in a short sprint, where you can make an argument that he's a Cy Young finalist in 2018. Maybe he comes back to that. And then Zach Wheeler comes back and is maybe really good for the Phillies, and he shows worth the money. Then that's a good starting rotation. But again, you can go back to Arrieta is worse than last year. Nola, we talked about him being a Cy Young contender, maybe is even worse, since he talked about a 3.87 ERA. You go back in different stretches. Maybe there's times where his ERA is not much over 3, or even below 3, but then there's times where maybe it's close to 5. What if Nola gets off to a bad start and has a rough year? What if Wheeler just is a disaster, right? So then the rotation is a weakness. Put it away right then and there. And then obviously the back end of the rotation, Zach Eflin, Nick Pivetta, and Vincent Velasquez, who all have been, at times, I guess you could say they've had good moments in their careers. They've all kind of been in an organization now, it seems like 3 or 4 years, as starting pitchers. Sure, Eflin had a great stretch. Sure, Pivetta did at times last year, and they both had very rough stretches. I mean, there was a time last year where Zach Eflin was one of the league leaders in complete games for a while, and still the two now will get you you'll pretty much be a league leader at this point in time. So again, back end, maybe the back end of the rotation is good, maybe it's not. So again, I think the rotation could be good or it could be very bad. I don't know. Bullpen up and down, very inconsistent. They had a lot of injuries last year, and this may be an inconsistent part of their team. And then obviously offense. So you have JT Realmuto, 25 home runs as a catcher. If this was a full normal season, he replicated that. I think he makes a lot of money. I think he'd be a potential $100 million catcher. This year, as a much little less time to really show that what type of player he is. Rhys Hoskins had a disappointing year last year. Not realized, struck out almost 200 times hitting the low 200s. Really took a step back. Andrew McCutchen towards ACL in early June of last year and played about 60 games. So again, if McCutchen can if he played like he did last year, and that before the knee injury, I think that would be a good stretch. And then you have Didi Gregorius paired with Gene Segura now. In comes Didi, who has a lot of experience playing with Joe Girardi. He's very familiar with him. Maybe they can, and it's a 1-year tryout deal basically. You have 60 games to show it. So again, as I've said many times, in other years where 60 games is just to start, where you have plenty of time to kind of bounce back, kind of get going. Oh, we got off to a slow start, time to turn around. Now, no, it's not football. Since you can't compare baseball to football, the intensity of the game. But these games will really matter. Like, I think we could start to be talking about potential things really after the first weekend of the season. Like, it could be like football. Where, it's like, that Thursday night game, something happens, you can already start talking. I think right now you can already start talking about these teams. Certainly after the first full week, maybe after we get 10 days under our belts. Since again, in many years the season starts on a Thursday and then you play a full week and then you're 10 days in, just the start of everything. This year, that is a different storyline since again now, it is 10 days. And not only that, you have 10 days under your belt. And not only that, you're about a sixth or so of the way done with the season. So the season's already underway. It's equivalent of a month's worth of baseball. So I think this is a Phillies team that I think they have to get off to a good, as with other teams. But again, thinking about the Phillies in years past. Hold on, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so what can we expect from Bryce Harper? What can we expect from Bryce Harper? So Bryce Harper, it's kind of interesting. This is his second year in Philadelphia, obviously. Last year at 35 home runs, struck out a huge amount. I think went through some slowing periods. And Bryce Harper, it's kind of interesting, hit over 300 in the second half of 2018. Really got going. I think that home run derby really rejuvenated him and hit 34 home runs. I think drove in close to 100 RBIs, maybe a little bit more. And ended up hitting 250, but he was hit right around 210 in the first half. Almost won the MVP in 2017. Would have won the MVP in 2017 if he didn't slip on the first base bag. In early August, I think he would have won that MVP that year. So it's hard to believe we're 5 years removed from the MVP season. So Harper, 60 games. Harper is usually a fast starter. I remember, looked like the next Barry Bonds or whatever. Just look absolutely invincible right out of the gate early in 2018. Right? If Harper can do that. And Harper's always been a fast starter. I remember got off to a really fast start in 2016. Harper always starts off fast. And if Bryce can just get off to a great start, play really well. What if you hit 20 home runs or something in those 60 games, and you hit well over 300, and Harper could win the MVP? I mean, he could win a second MVP this year. I really think that could happen. Or you get the type of version where maybe it's 200 this year. He could win the MVP or have a terrible year. I mean, I don't know if Bryce, but again, we think could be one of the best players in baseball. I think we'll have a good year overall, for sure. But I think we don't know what the final numbers will look like. And then I think another big storyline to think about: Joe Girardi is now the manager of the Phillies, and Joe Girardi, great track record in New York, won a World Series. I think has helped teams that were maybe not supposed to be very good become good teams. I thought did a good job in 2013 and 14, where they were in the wild card hunt late in the year when they really weren't supposed to be contenders. I think did really well in 2017, where I thought they weren't supposed to make it to the playoffs that year. I thought it would be kind of a rebuilding year, where they weren't quite a playoff team. Went all the way to the ALCS. Left. I can't believe they left the Yankees. That never should have happened. Took 2 years off, is now with the Phillies. I think maybe took the right job, since under Gabe Kapler, this team has gotten off to good starts. They have, which this might go to their advantage. and they were in first place in the NL East last June. They were in first place in the NL East in 2018 for parts of July when the Braves kind of stumbled, and for even into August at times, and the Braves just completely overtook them. This team was in it, and they looked like a playoff caliber team at times in both of those years. And now, this year, I think they need to show that they are a playoff team. Since sure, they went through a terrible, terrible stretches kind of in the middle of the decade when they lost games in the upper 90s. I think they lost 99 and 97 games in 2015 and 17. They need to be better than 500, and I think they need to go to the playoffs this year. And this is the first year under manager Joe Girardi, and what's expected with this team is that they make it to the playoffs this year. I think those are the expectations around the team. You have Joe Girardi, maybe that's a big difference maker, and I'm interested to see how the bullpen does. At times it looks like it can be very good. It can be a good bullpen. At times it looks like it's one of the worst bullpens in baseball. So again, they need good starting pitching. We need a better performance from the bullpen, and I think this lineup could be really good. And the Phillies, again, fast starter. They could just go out of the gate, be on a sprint, get off to a really fast start, and be one of the better teams in baseball this year. I think that is possible this year, or they could miss the playoffs. And again, this is a 60-game season, so again, this year's not fair. I get it. This year's not fair. I think expanded playoffs, I've stressed this too many times. I can't stress this enough. I think it would have been fairer this year, but this year is not fair. And the Phillies have to be that team that was in first place in August of 2018, or first place in June of 2019, and not a team that collapsed down the stretch and ended up being a 500 team. Because if they play 500 baseball this year, they're not going to make it to the playoffs. So now the Mets. The Mets are always an interesting team to talk about. So Jacob deGrom might have a back injury, and I've heard him talk in press conferences, talking just briefly about it. I think he says he's fine, doesn't think it's too serious. In fact, he was talking about how if this was a regular season game, he probably wouldn't have said anything, but it was an inter-squad game, wanted to mention it, minor back injury, and again, this is the start of the season. How well does deGrom feel at the start of the season? Does this become an issue? Is this something that happens pretty much all year long? Does he pitch through a back injury this year? Does he somehow aggravate the injury early in the season and then, 60-day DL stint and then just miss the rest of the year? And if that happens, I think the Mets are in trouble for sure. But he had minor back injuries in 2016 and 18. In 2018, won the Cy Young, had one of the lowest ERAs in baseball history. It was like 177 or something like that. He's won back-to-back Cy Youngs. You can make an argument that Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher in baseball right now. And they need that Cy Young caliber pitcher if they want to make it to the playoffs. And again, this is a short spread. I mean, think about winning 3 Cy Youngs in a row. The last 4 National League Cy Young Award winners have come out of the National League East. Max Scherzer won in 2016 and 17. And then Jacob deGrom won in 18 and 19. I think Scherzer would have won last year if he was healthy. So then, the rest of the rotation is Marcus Stroman, who again came in from Toronto. At times was the ace of the Blue Jays. You have Steven Matz, who's been there now. This is his 5th full year with the Mets. Has had a lot of injuries in his career. Is inconsistent. We don't know what you're getting out of Steven Matz. Porcello, he won the Cy Young Award in 2016. Didn't deserve it. He had 22 wins. I think, again, wins were overrated. Has kind of regressed every year since then. Really bottomed out last year for ERA over 5. Then you have Michael Wacha, had good moments in St. Louis, but is no longer part of the rotation. And by the way, Noah Syndergaard's out for the year of Tommy John surgery. So again, deGrom, one of the best pitchers in baseball. I think he's going to be really good this year. Stroman could be good. Matz, I don't know. Porcello, I don't know. Wacha, we don't know. Both kind of free agent signings, low budget free agent signings. So really, that's the thing with the Mets pitching is I don't know how good their starting pitching is going to be. If let's just say this team was in the playoffs right now. You start the playoffs right now. You have deGrom. deGrom is the type of pitcher you want pitching in the playoffs. Stroman, You could see him in the playoffs, pitching in the playoffs with Toronto. And then Matt, sure, he was part of that 2015 team, was the number 4 starter that year. And then Porcello, sure, he's had a lot of postseason experience, going all these years in Detroit and Boston. That's great. And then Walker, sure, he has postseason experience with the Cardinals all those years in St. Louis. But take a step backwards now. If this is right now, you're in the playoffs right now, and you're having to pitch against these teams. Like you can go up against the Nationals. DeGrom, Scherzer, even. But then you go up against Strasburg, Corbin, then this is all on paper. Sanchez, it probably drops off. Anibal Sanchez could be a number 2 starter with the Mets right now. Go up against Atlanta. Soroka, DeGrom, okay. But then you want to do Foltynewicz, Fried, and the Braves could have the advantage there. Phillies, maybe even. Or you want to go the Los Angeles Dodgers, who sure lost Hyun-Jin Ryu, tried to replace him with David Price. No David Price. Maybe that makes things a little bit easier now. Or even the Yankees, who I just talked about. Cole DeGrom, even. Maybe Cole, I don't know. But even. And then you put together Stroman against Paxton, and I don't know. Or Matz against Tanaka. Again, I think this is a questionable rotation. Great at the top half. Question is how good is 2 through 5. Bullpen needs to improve. Certainly Edwin Diaz, who they really gave up a lot to get, along with Robinson Cano. Really had a terrible year last year. Had one of the best years the closers ever had in 2018. Really took a massive, massive step back last year. Diaz needs to be a lot better. Betances is coming off a torn Achilles, was dominant in New York. With the Yankees all those years, is coming in. If Diaz really bounces back and is close to 2018, and then Betances is like what he was from 2014 and 2018, the back end of the bullpen could be really good. And then lineups, the interesting storylines, Jeff McNeil, I think, could win a batting title at 318 last year. Hit over 300 his rookie year in 2018. He is a really good hitter. I think he's one of the better average hitters in all of baseball. Michael Conforto, which I forgot about this until I looked it up last night, at 33 home runs and 92 RBIs in 2019. It is good when healthy. And here's another storyline I want to talk about. Yoenis Cespedes, who basically missed all of 2019. He's had a lot of injuries with the Mets. When he's healthy, I think he's put together some really good years. I mean, a huge reason why they went to the World Series in 2015. Here's what's going to happen, and I hope this goes into the case in 2021. Cespedes is going to DH, and this will impact him in a great deal since he doesn't have to worry about playing in the field this year. He can just focus on hitting, and let's say, is it DH this year? All he does is hit. And remember 2015, that sample size of the Mets is about approximately the same as what this year is going to be, probably playing about the same number of games. This is the same type deal, and if Cespedes, he does what he does in 2015, which again, in this sample size, I think he really can. I mean, it's a small sample size. In a full year, no, he can't do that, but in this sample size, comes in and just hits with the Mets, hits for a really high average, driving a lot of runs, is one of their best hitters on the team. Cespedes could be that dark horse guy. I mean, definitely a comeback player of the year, but Cespedes could get MVP votes this year if he just comes back and leads the Mets to the playoffs again. Could this be like 2015? Could you have those reminders? And then Pete Alonso at 53 home runs, 2019, about the same time now, could hit 20 home runs. Now, does he hit 20 home runs? I don't know. That could be an interesting thing, but can Alonso build off last year? And then here's another thing. So Luis Rojas was younger than 40. I think he's like 37, 38. He's a young manager who was replacing Carlos Beltran. Obviously, what happened with Beltran related to the Astros scandal. So again, now you have a young manager who I think was a coach in the Mets organization, was a coach of the Mets organization before, so obviously knows a lot of the players. So this is a young manager who is stepping in and trying to manage a team which there is familiarity. But that's an interesting storyline, kind of having a young manager with the New York media, with a team I think they do have high expectations. And remember, this is a 4-team race. And the East, this is a division that could very well send 3 teams to the playoffs, and I think that could very well happen. This division could send 3 teams to the playoffs. If, say, no one else in the NL Central is good enough, if the Brewers and Cubs or Reds are not good enough, or maybe the Cardinals win the division, or in the West the Dodgers run with the division, no one else, whether that's the Rockies or the Padres. Oh, I can't believe I'm blanking on the other team. The Rockies or the Padres or the D-backs. The Rockies, the Padres, or D-backs, maybe none of them are good enough to win the division or even make it to the wild card. This is a team that could send 3 teams to the playoffs. It very well could. And one of these teams, whether that's the Mets or Phillies, I think probably will get left out. Again, this could be a very strong division, and not only that, looking at the schedule, all these 4 teams can play the Marlins, who will maybe still be one of the worst teams in baseball this year. We'll play the Orioles, who may still be one of the worst teams in baseball this year, not to mention the Red Sox and the Blue Jays. So again, you have 6 really good teams, 2 really bad teams, and probably 2 mediocre teams at best. That's what this year could be. And in this division, would I be surprised if the NL and AL East met up in the World Series? Not at all. I think that very well could happen. You could potentially see 2 of these teams meeting up in the wild cards, which will happen if you do have 2 wild cards. And not only that, maybe even in the first round or in the NLCS, depending on who has the best record in the National League this year. So again, this is a very interesting division. I think these games will be worth watching. These games will definitely be worth watching. So again, the Mets, I think, are going to finish in 4th place. I think the Phillies will be slightly better, but that doesn't mean they're a bad team. I just think they're going to be a good team, a good competitive team, just not quite enough. And this is a year that they can build on, since, again, if you had a bigger playoff system, the Mets would have made it to the playoffs last year. So again, all these teams are going to be interesting. Whichever of these teams gets off to a hot start could very well end up winning the division. So again, thank you for listening to this edition, and we'll see you next time. Our next edition will do AL and NL Central, and then we'll try to do the West. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.